twist, and I know I done said a lot, but I should probably stop pretending. I don't really hold the key and I can't really push a button. I just step up to the mic and try my very best to bust it, but I ran out of breath. It's tight in my chest, my feet just might fail. I can't stand up.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Racially Speaking. I'm your host, David Phipps, and we are properly, hopefully we're not going to reach this point, but properly burning the midnight oil. I say that sometimes on here, but I've got two dedicated returning guests to the show, and at this time of recording, we're almost pushing 10 o'clock, but that's dedication. These women take this podcast seriously, and we take this podcast seriously. We got some important topics tonight, and we were just talking before I hit record, but I probably, as I do, bit off more than I can chew. Got two robust conversations I want to have in this hour-ish episode of the pod. I've got Allana and Vicky Willis returning to the show, so welcome back, ladies. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Vicky, you've been on a couple times fairly recently. Allana, it's been longer, but both of you are, you're not currently teaching right now, but you guys are teachers, or were teachers, however you want me to word that, Vicky.
Always
but
a teacher, right?
Yeah, you're always a teacher by vocation. And so, look, I want to talk a little bit about education, obviously, and what's been going on lately with, I'll just say with that for now, and then move on to perhaps a more robust conversation on something relatively different. So I'll lob that up a little bit, and then you'll just have to listen before we get to that. So, look, ladies, for anybody listening, maybe for the first time, could you guys tell the listeners a little bit about yourself? You can take that however you want, but specifically as it relates to your teaching careers.
Yeah, I can go first. So, my name is Allana, like David said. Yeah. I started teaching in 2020.
Did you start in 2020? Man.
Not 2020. I'm so sorry. 2022.
Okay.
In my brain, I said 2022, and I forgot to add the 2 at the end.
Oh my God, what a time to start.
I went to grad school in 2021 for education, and then I started teaching that next year, and then I first started teaching at Anacostia High School up in DC, which was definitely a journey, and I learned a lot.
I think that's where you were last time we were on here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I decided I wanted to move closer to where I'm living currently, just because it is kind of a commute. So now I'm currently teaching up in Fairfax County at a secondary school. And I am a history teacher. So I originally started teaching like world history. And then this past year, I actually started teaching world history and U.S. history, which was actually a lot of fun. And
wow,
yeah,
what a time to teach U.S. history.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I was just thinking.
It was like my first AP class that they gave me, and first time teaching U.S. history as well. So I was like, this is a great.
Goodness
actually,
gracious.
It actually was a great time because I feel like I had a lot of really good conversations with the students because I could include a lot of relevant information that was happening. And then even with coworkers, like we're always talking about, regardless of belief system or like viewpoint, we're always just talking about what's currently going on just because it's relevant to what we're teaching in the classroom constantly.
Wow. Okay. That's really cool. I mean, that's an encouraging experience you just shared with us. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah. I'm definitely going to come back to that. Vicky, tell us a little bit about your teaching career.
I actually started teaching in 2020. I taught half a semester online. Well, it was like online virtual-ish. It was like the first like fallback or whatever it was. But I started teaching elementary art in 2021, and I was the only art teacher at my school. I taught until this past year. I had grades K through 6, and so it was a wide variety of kids, a lot of different kind of conversations. And then we decided about 2 weeks before I was supposed to go back to school that it was time to move back to Southwest Virginia and have me stay home with the little one. But I do think about teaching like every single day. I do miss it. I love it. I told Elijah, my husband, the other day that aside from being a mom and a wife, that was like what I'm meant to do. Like I miss being in my classroom. I just know it's not the time yet to go back.
Yeah.
But
Yet.
yes.
Yet. If you've been listening, listeners know that I've got personal interest in Vicky returning to the classroom being so close to where I live. Anyway, all right. Thank you guys for giving us a little snippet about your guys' careers and passions so far. All right, look, let's jump in. I kind of gave a rundown of where we wanted to go with this, and I feel like the hardest part is always where to enter in and to start with some of these conversations. But let's start here. What are your guys? I want to see where you go with this off the bat, but what are your guys' thoughts, and what is perhaps reality, but on the conversation about the Department of Education being done away with? That's a big question, but let's start. Okay, so that's a thing, right? It's not. It hasn't actually happened, but
But
they
it
want it.
feels like it has, right? I feel
Feels like
like
it
all the
has,
headlines are just like it's dismantled, we're done, it's not there anymore.
right? I just
But it's
don't
like
know. It hasn't like actually objectively
it's not
happened
like a
though.
yeah.
I don't think there's any, like, I'm pretty sure they fired a good chunk of.
Yeah,
Yes, they
They resigned or moved them
right.
or something.
So I guess
So
I don't know when or how we would know that it's actually done away with. Because my question, and this might sound dumb, but is, well, does that mean the Department of Education, if it was shut down, that the Department of Education secretary would then lose, not have, like, she would be doing away with her own job? You know what I'm saying?
okay, I've wondered that too.
Sharon McMahon?
So like
Yeah.
she wants to get fired.
That,
I think either that or because I have a friend who works for the Small Business Association, and so
okay.
she's still there, thankfully. But I've been kind. She's been kind of like telling me how it's been working with how they've been shifting stuff. So
Okay.
I think either she would either lose her job, which again I'm not 100% sure, or I think she would maybe absorb into another job or another department somehow.
Okay.
Like because I think with the Department of Education it kind of still exists as an entity, but other um, organizations have like absorbed some of its
Yeah.
work. So, like I know,
Mm,
like I think student loans, maybe. I I thought my friend said this, but I obviously need to do a bit more research. But I'm pretty sure for at least the student loan aspect, they've absorbed some of those roles, which I don't know how that's gonna do because I
Uh,
know they're already overworked doing what they were supposed to be doing in the first place.
yeah.
But supposedly, like other departments or other organizations are gonna start just absorbing things, or they have been absorbing things if they haven't already.
I don't even
Uh,
understand how that would functionally work, but that's probably not worth asking right now. So when someone says they're going to shut down or do away with the Department of Education, I think most of us don't know what that means right off the bat. Like, what do you mean? Like, what? How's that possible? Is, I think, most people's reaction, and perhaps why. But what is it that you think that you would say people don't understand about what that would mean if it was in fact done? And I know, I mean, Allana, you shared about even just your most recent hands-on experience, even teaching something like U.S. history, which I feel like has been probably the most attacked curriculum that over the last, certainly few years. And I know You've even done a lot of, at least offhanded research and been posting a lot about that, at least on social media. So, like, what are you guys' thoughts on what people most misunderstand about what that would mean for everybody? Like, obviously the kids and teachers.
Really curious how Alana is going to answer this because it's like we're really attacking your subject
Yeah.
for a lot of the reason as to why this is happening. No
Yeah.
pressure.
No, yeah. So for me at least, I think the issue is that for at least from what I've seen with the way they've gone about it and like hearing people's justifications for dismantling it or getting rid of it, it's like this overarching narrative of like bringing education back to the states is like
Mm-hmm.
kind of it seems like the wording that I'm consistently hearing. But I think the problem is that people don't really know the history behind the Department of Education and actually what its job is for. And the thing is that education is already with the states. It's always been with the states.
Yeah.
It's never going away from the states. States have had control over education since the beginning of time of
So
the
can you
state.
break that down? Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean by that? Because I think
So
most people understand that they're talking about the federal level getting rid of the Department of Education, but what does it mean that it is already with the states?
yeah, so like it, and then it always goes back to history and like just knowing that information. But like the Department of Education was created after or during the civil rights movement, and it was created to regulate the states in making sure that they were providing equal education for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So when Ruby Bridges was walking to school or having to be walked to school, or when they were doing the desegregation laws coming into place, especially in the
Mm-hmm.
Midwest, like Kansas and everything. The Department of Education was created to make sure those states
Yeah.
were following the law.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of been its overarching job since then. They make sure, like, their overarching job is to make sure that states are legally providing education for everybody. They're not denying anybody the education that they deserve because that is a law in the country that every student, every child, regardless of status or otherwise, are supposed to be provided an equal education. And so their job is to follow that, and then like over time they've just included things like anything to do with special education.
Mm-hmm.
So funding for that.
5F and
Yeah, so funding
the
for that.
NICs.
So like anything to do with like um, any type of therapy. So like maybe speech therapy, maybe reading therapy. The funding for that comes from
Right.
that, and then I think I don't know as much about when student loans started being including there, but I think just like the legality of student loans, I think fall under that arch too
Okay.
somewhere. Um, but it's never actually taken. So like and the issue seems to be what schools are teaching curriculum.
Right.
It's never taken that power away from the states. States have always been able to um decide their curriculum, if that makes sense. Like there's a common core like they have to follow. Like every state has to teach math, science, reading,
Mm-hmm.
whatever other subject fits under that role of common core. They all have to teach it, but they do, I think, well, and I don't know as many details about how it was decided, like how each state decides how to teach or what to teach or what specifics go into the curriculum, but they still have that power to do that. So,
Okay.
like for everybody, and we kind of saw it with DeSantis or with Florida. So like with them kind of putting more regulations on teaching specific subjects in history, like African American history, the governor has always had the power to decide what to teach and what information is being taught. And
Okay.
so
So
I think there's
that's
sorry.
important. No, that's okay. I feel that's important to at least be objective for a second to say like that isn't something that you're saying isn't something that the governors like DeSantis, Youngkin. That's not something new that they've just been able to do because of the threat of getting rid of Department of Education.
That's the biggest common misconception whenever people say, like, give education back to the states. The states have always had that
Right.
power. It's,
So to argue both
yeah.
sides, because I think it's helpful at least to what is it too simplistic to say? It sounds like what you guys are saying is the Department of Education, broadly speaking, is more an accountability system for, I guess, dignity and equal opportunity, equality type stuff versus, and not so much like it's not curriculum based,
Yes.
even though by
No.
nature you would think it might be with Department of Education, but it's so it what
It's a
what
it's
reason could we
required, like,
possibly have to get to do away with it?
good question.
Uh-huh.
Again, I
Is the
think
answer that easy? Like,
it's unfortunately due to like misinformation and just like people really, and I genuinely think it's people really not understanding the role of certain departments or certain entities within the
mhm,
government, which is fair. It's and that's everybody, like regardless of where you live, who you are. Like I think people don't really know certain things. Like when my friend got hired for Small Business Association, I didn't know what that was. I was like, I don't know what they do. I assume it's what small businesses, but until she explained it to me, it wasn't something I knew what their job was in the government. And so,
it's okay to a
I,
point. I think that point being, if you're the Secretary of Education, you should know what you're doing. And
oh
I've seen too
yeah,
many clips of her fumbling through basic information on education. Like, yeah.
I think some of the reason why people want to get rid of the Department of Education is the idea that it's like wasted money. Like the people we are paying in that area, we're wasting money on them, is what a lot of people, or a lot of things that I see. Or sometimes I feel like we talk about like inefficiencies and where we can not spend as much. I feel like a lot, I don't want to say a lot of people. I feel like people do think that that's something we can get rid of, but then that gets rid of equality for all students and all of those things that you were held accounted for.
Hmm.
I think that people like being held accounted for for what they do. But
Well, I don't think that's
I don't know.
wrong.
It's
Like,
really,
I think that efficiency, saving money, and stuff, those are real things that people
you're
believed
right.
in and maybe still, I guess, believe in, especially at the beginning of this current administration. There's a whole department created for that. And so I think that is
Yeah.
exactly what happens and what has been happening. But now we're left to pick up the pieces and figure out what is efficient or economically a good idea versus just ignorance and an assault on human rights. Like, and so it's left to just normal people to figure this stuff out now. Honestly, like we're doing right now. Like, I think the funny thing is, yes, on one side, it's like stuff has become too complicated, or, and but then you got people saying we have to know. You need to be more well researched. You need to know this, this, and this. And it's like, well, it's kind of both because stuff is being, to me, this is my personal take, too many obviously egregiously wrong things are being done by people in power that we're left to ask dumb questions.
Hmm.
Like, oh yeah, like I'm not, like we have to be like, I'm not a expert here, nor do I want to be, but am I crazy? Like, is there another reason this would be happening other than racism, sexism, or bigotry, like stuff like that? It's just like I want to
Yeah.
hear. I ask those questions in a way, knowing I'm not going to hear something different most of the time, but I want to hear someone be like, "No, this is you're actually wrong. This is what's happening," so I can feel better. But I just continually hear like,
What you're
"Oh,
thinking
you're
or
saying
saying
I'm
is actually
right?
right.
How
Yeah.
is that possible?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Okay.
The thing that I keep
Yeah. Go ahead.
seeing also is this administration wants dumber people. So they're taking away all of the resources to build up the next generation to have like a decent education, right? So if you take away the Department of Education, then you no longer have 504s or IEPs, and all of those things will set children back as opposed to helping them move forward and receiving that equal opportunity education that they have now, which also makes children easier to manipulate, right? So if we continue to have an administration or like a government that we do, then we're essentially like raising a generation of not as like bright people, because we're taking away that human right from them, which is a crazy thought. And I hate thinking that is even like a possibility, but then it's like, why else?
So I guess the Department of Education is also a little more financial based, versus, aside from not being curriculum based. So without the Department of Education, with the Department of Education, I guess, how much, like, what does being held accountable look like? Because you said states could still pick curriculum. So is there not, where's the line that the Department of Education or at the federal level would step in? Like, how does banning AP US history or African American history not fall under the Department of Education stepping in and saying, no, that's wrong?
I don't have an answer to that, and I'm hoping
Yeah, that's where
Allana does.
Allana, this rides on you.
I'm trying to think. I don't know. So I don't know how much of a role it plays on curriculum. I'm gonna say at all, mostly especially just because with AP classes, they are given through College Board, which is its own entity.
Yeah.
So like there's no other company that I know of that does AP classes besides College Board. Like that test they take every year that everybody takes when they take an AP class, it's through that one company. So I think it's kind of privatized in a way. So I think that's why and I'm only using Florida because it's the only one I know of for sure that is like has like adjusted or altered classes of some sort when it comes to AP. But when they started, or were maybe, I don't know if they fully already did it, but when they were leaning towards banning AP African American history, I think the only real entity they had to really fight, maybe if they put up a fight, was College Board. I don't think it was the Department of Education.
Okay.
From my understanding, the thing that they mostly focus on are the rights of the children. So, or like the people, whoever's in the education system. So, because I think even maybe Title IX, which is more university level, I think that's even under the Department of Education of some sort. But so my best example would be to give is like if a child, either maybe one specific race or maybe regardless of race, if they were unfortunately for not really any clear reason kicked out of school and maybe expelled and weren't giving a clear reason why, I think that's where the Department of Education would step in.
Okay.
Again, going back to just its history with the civil rights movements, when another example, Little Rock Nine. So when those 9 African American students were allowed to go to a desegregated school for the first time, I believe it was, who was it? It was not Carter. It was Johnson, one of the presidents. It's late, so I'm like blinking.
Yeah, you're
But
good.
one of the presidents was able to use like the Department of Education to call upon the FBI to enforce them being able to enter those schools. There were some schools who were saying we're not letting them in the building.
Yeah, I think that was Johnson, and he kind of went toe to toe with the Alabama governor, I think.
Yes. The department is there for that kind of protection. The humanity, like you said earlier, like the humanities of it, and like the rights of it all. So to make sure that no student is being denied an education unfairly. I don't know if like how much they cover curriculum wise. I don't really know if that.
Mhm.
I don't even know if they have that power, to be honest. I haven't.
Yeah, I mean, you saying that, what I've read and listened to would back that up too. That's what I've kind of gathered, but it's still being new to trying to understand it just surprises me because I just hear Department of Education, I think of
And you think that they
curriculum.
have,
Mhm.
yeah.
And I think that's the thought everybody has. Like even me, when I first started getting into education, I knew it was there, and I knew like
Yeah.
kind of the
Yeah.
basics, but at the same time, it wasn't until I started hearing like, oh, the Department of Education, like hearing all the like confusing narratives, that I was like, I feel like I need a little bit, like I'm gonna do a little bit more reading, because I feel
Mhm.
like I don't know if this is accurate or not. And so um once I like learned more, I was like, okay, so they really don't. I don't really think they touch upon the curriculum
Okay.
aspect of education much at all. I really think that is the state's prerogative in that
Hmm.
sense.
I think their other biggest, like, I guess, topic would just be financial responsibility and like how they help schools and districts and states provide that equal opportunity education. Um,
Yeah.
because in those areas where um, schools don't have as much money, they provide excellent, like let's say like 10% of whatever it is, so students have those resources.
Yeah,
That's
especially
definitely regulated by them.
excuse me, especially with like the special education aspect of it.
Hmm.
I know for sure a good chunk of the funding that schools receive for special education programs um, come from the Department of Education as well. So when student, again, like it's with earlier, like when students need some sort of therapy, when they need
Mhm.
some sort of intervention to help them, whether it be due to behavioral or even just learning disabilities, that's where they are able to receive the funding for that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
um Overall, which I don't know how much, uh I don't know if the states take on any of that at all. If they do, I don't know how much it is like divided between like the state and the Department of Education, but I think maybe the bulk of it is under the Department of Education
Hmm.
for the most
It
part.
typically depends on like the area and what the demographics look like with like economics, sorry, not demographics, economics look like, and then number of students at the school who needs resources.
Mhm. I mean, Alana, you giving the quick history of when the Department of Education was even created, the fact that it was created during and in response to the civil rights movement, and then just the feeling we have now in 2025 of, like I said, having to ask dumb questions, but I can't get away from, racially speaking, the racial component of that. It's just so, to me, so clearly racially motivated. And then with that, people that have been all about that, I think, have gotten themselves in hopefully some hot water, because then they're realizing, oh, I don't know what I'm talking about because I didn't. I'm assuming, maybe some did, that most of those people who are doing it based on race and supporting doing away with it are not realizing, oh, this is actually also affecting special ed and all these other things that, shoot, is really detrimental to more people than Black and brown people. I know there's some overlap, but does that make sense? Is that kind of fair to say?
Yeah, and I think people don't even realize how much it even affects like lower economic areas. So
Hmm.
even those areas that are not, that do have maybe predominantly white people, like
Oh yeah, I
like
saw
the
a
mid,
chart that's talked about that. Sorry, I'll cut you
yeah,
off,
like
but yeah, it was
you're good.
affecting people
Those
who,
smaller counties in like the
yeah,
Midwest, that affects them too, because they are smaller funded school, like
yeah,
they're not. they're not wealthy schools because they're in smaller towns. So that affects them
Mhm.
too because they do benefit from that funding.
Yeah, demographically, it was affecting. Obviously, there's exceptions, but broadly speaking, the places that would have voted for the current administration to be in
Mhm.
power, and circular comes back, and now it's like, well, this is actually affecting you. Which, I mean, a hill I'll die on is continuing to say, hey, it's not white supremacy, racism. It hurts everybody, and that's like a perfect example of we're not just saying that for fun. Like, it really does hurt everybody. Like, people in power, white people in power, don't care about poor white people like as much as they want to think that they do, and that's a whole historical thing as well. Yeah, I know you guys know that, but okay. Well, I mean, uh, I guess what. How do we put a bow on this for now? Like, where do we go?
It's
Like,
hard.
yeah. Well, Allana, you said you know a lot about Florida, but so do you feel like things in your classroom or like in Virginia, I guess, haven't been affected by a lot of stuff we hear that's going on? Because I'd associate Governor Youngkin pretty closely with the DeSantis, but doesn't sound
Yeah,
like you felt that as much.
surprisingly I didn't. I will say Fairfax, which I don't know why I didn't know this before I was hired there, but I guess I just didn't pay attention. It is a pretty more liberal area.
Mhm.
So they're more protective of their population.
Okay.
They
Like
are.
student
They're
population
very, yeah.
overall, like, they're very protective of them. So a lot of the and I don't know if other parts of Virginia were experiencing it a little bit more of a crackdown. Um,
Mm.
I got lucky because I had a pretty good department and a department chair who was very much like you're teaching the facts, and that's also just the way I teach in general. Like, I try not to put my own views in my teaching. I try to make sure I'm presenting them with all the information so that they can make their own informed decisions.
Hmm.
And that's what I tell them every year when I start the class. I'm like, I try not to input my opinion. Now, I will ask questions like, is this right? Is this wrong? And I allow for the conversation to happen as long as it's healthy discourse. But I try to keep it pretty neutral for the most part, though I'm honest about, like, I'm if I'm asked the question, I don't mind being honest about not my views per se, but just about everything that's happening overall, which I did have a few of those questions.
Yeah.
Um, just
Um,
how, like, things were being implemented and stuff. And but yeah, that's like kind of how I go about it. And so luckily I didn't really experience too much um in the classroom for the most part. And my students were pretty respectful for the most part. Like, I didn't really have any um issues with anybody, like,
Okay.
too much disagreement or discourse at all either,
Yeah. Man,
which
you
I
guys
feel like I
being in
got.
secondary school and having kids in public school, I'm more just hats off to you guys, because I fear I stay in college because I fear like parents having to deal with all that kind of stuff. So college, I'm good. Like, no parents are gonna call me or anything and have parent teacher conferences or anything. But that's what I would be more afraid of
do you
parents
ever
hearing
get
what.
parents like contacting you? Sorry to cut you off, David.
No, you're good. No, I don't know what I would do if someone did. I don't even know how they would, but
What
no.
about you, Lana?
No. So, when I was at Anacostia, I was dealing with a lower economic population, so I didn't really have to deal with parents too much, mostly because they were working a lot.
Mhm.
Um, which was unfortunate, but, like, it was just kind of the way of the area. And then now being at Fairfax, I was actually expecting more parent interaction, especially when I got the AP class. And I was a
Hmm.
little nervous because I was like, mostly because I also recognize that I look very young. And so I
Hmm.
didn't want to go in there and the parents be like, she's too young to teach this class. So that was my biggest
She doesn't
concern.
know
But
history.
actually,
She's 18.
yeah, like, I was kind of concerned about that. But for the most part, I didn't have any real issues. If I did deal with parents, it was actually more from the middle school end, just because middle school boys are a little bit immature, so I may have had to contact a parent or two.
Mm.
But um, I didn't have to. Luckily, I think I got lucky, at least with this past year, that I didn't really have too many negative, or if any, negative parent interactions. Now, I did hear, because I have a coworker who teaches comparative government, and so she, like, whereas U.S. I can kind of draw more current things, but I'm still more focused on the past, so it's not always relevant. Her course is a little bit more relevant because she is comparing other governments and the US. And so she has to kind of use more current events to teach her class. And so
Yeah.
I did hear stories about how she did deal with a little bit more discourse from parents sometimes with her content. It's again, luckily at that school we have a pretty supportive department head who, like, she's a straight shooter, so if we do go overboard, she's not afraid to tell us, but for the most part she recognizes that we try our best to be as neutral as possible, um, also still being very honest with the kids and being upfront about just what's happening in the world, because I feel like, at least with the high school age, like, they're seeing it too, and they're at a point where they're about to graduate and start voting, and I would rather them have the full picture to make an informed decision than sugarcoat it and they leave with a false narrative of what's really going on, if that makes sense.
That's
So
great.
the reason I asked that was because, like, as an elementary teacher, I feel like we are in contact with parents all the time. And even when I'm talking to my friends who are still teaching, they are constantly having to, like, email parents, contact parents about their kids bringing in what's happening in the real world into their classroom. So one of my friends said towards the end of the year, um, one of her students were afraid to come to school because this boy was telling her that her parents were going to get deported, and, like, her
Mm.
family's going to be taken apart. And I think it's so crazy. I think maybe the first episode that I did with you, David, we talked about my second graders saying racial comments. And I think it's so crazy that the littles are the ones who are, like, really acting on what they're hearing and they're seeing, um, to the point where we have to contact parents. Not saying that it's not happening anywhere else, uh, but it just shows that they're watching and they're understanding and they're
Hmm.
bringing it. And I don't even know where I'm going with this. But yeah, I think it's crazy that the little ones are the ones that are, like, really mean about it.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
I'm gonna be teaching seventh grade this year. Seventh
Bless
grade
you.
history. So it's gonna be
Mm.
interesting. I feel like I'm not
Those
sure.
sixth graders were rough.
I may get a little bit more. It's potential I could get a little bit more pushback depending on the students I have. I know for sure towards the end of the year last year, I did have a little, like, once everything with, like, immigration and like the deportations really started happening, I did have a couple of students who were a little bit more concerned, and I felt bad because I didn't know I didn't know how to comfort them, because I didn't know, like, you know what I mean, there's no there's
Yeah.
no, so I don't know what the solution is to, like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean, trying to, like,
Like, you
trying to
can't promise anything, but you
yeah,
can't,
like,
like,
trying to comfort them without really being able to provide an answer or, like, a
yeah.
guarantee. I was like, I don't know where to go to from this, because and so that was hard, like, trying to figure out, like, how do you navigate um comforting them while also not being able to guarantee a solution
Yeah.
Yeah.
or anything or a positive outcome.
Yeah. All right. We can move off this. I appreciate you guys. Yeah, having all those thoughts and kind of giving at least not exhaustive, not exhaustive conversation on like nothing else can be said. But I think I don't know. Like I guess leaving the conversation, I'd say for obvious reasons, we'd hope the Department of Education does not get removed, but not because we have anything to gain politically, hopefully it's clear that it seems like it is about dignity and caring for the marginalized. If there ever was, a moral side to
Yes,
government,
yeah.
think this is one, and it doesn't seem like any of us has pinpointed a good reason to get rid of it. Like, not even, I don't think we've touched on any positive reason, and it seems like there's just a lot of misinformation that it needs to be waded through. Yeah, gosh, God bless you guys being teachers, Allana, heading into the school year. Gosh, I hope it continues to be, a pleasantly good experience. It seems like it's been, when I think outside looking in, a lot of us like me would think, gosh, I would get out of there as fast as possible. But please don't do that, because it sounds like we need you in there.
I've joked around and said I won't go back until we have a new administration, but then I'm like, it's a while, and like kids need
You feel needed
good
too.
teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me do not really a 180 or anything. It's obviously still going to be on topic, but all right. We talked a little bit about this, all three of us. Another conversation I wanted to have is, I'm trying to figure out how to launch into this actually. So I sent you guys a video at some point a couple weeks ago, and I'd already been thinking about this with just even the nature of a lot of conversations around whether it's race, education, political stuff, religious stuff, about this topic. And it's really about solidarity. And specifically, if I can think back to 4 years ago or so when I started this podcast, I largely started this to have conversations like this one. And it's kind of what does solidarity look like between, well, I guess for our conversation, the Black community and the Asian community, which is painting with broad strokes, I know. And the reason I think it's important is because I think there's a lot of things misconstrued across different cultural lines. And I think a lot of times we view the race conversation a little almost too simplistically. And so there's a guy he wrote this book called Strangers in the Land. I'll mispronounce his last name, but Michael Luo, how you pronounce it. He's on the Daily Show talking to Ronnie Chang, and I've not read the book or anything, but I thought the title of the video got my attention was why so many Asian people go MAGA, so vote for Trump. And I've thought about that a lot because I've seen that be true personally, and then I've thought about since 2020 different ways solidarity has been really beautiful and then been really messy. Obviously back 2020, 2019, George Floyd, Taylor, other people in the whole uprising and racial reckoning we all had. And then even fast forward to now, for different reasons, it's still I'd say the biggest conversation kind of across the board. It kind of touches everything, as we just saw in our education conversation. Solidarity has been kind of messy. And so I'd wonder kind of what your guys' thoughts are on that, like broadly speaking, and then maybe even on a personal level, how you guys have seen that. And I guess kind of what I mean is, historically at times there's been, as much as we talk about white supremacy and white people hating people of color, and oftentimes I'd say Black people, more specifically, there's also been times where Asian community and Black community don't get along, and there's times where there's a lot of solidarity. And so, all that to say, is this just in my head, or what do you guys think if I bring that up?
Um, it's tough because since you sent that video, I've seen a lot of videos of like Filipino women or Filipino men like wearing all the MAGA, and then it's like a reporter saying, "Why did you vote for Trump? What's your favorite thing about it?" And or him, and they truly just don't have a reason. It's just like, I know this one lady, she said something like, well, he's putting like deportation laws into place that are like more strict. And I'm just like, but you were an immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said something about him being peaceful, and it was something had just happened with Gaza and Israel, and we're like, this isn't peaceful. I think in the Philippines, a lot of people have a lot of gratitude and grace towards Americans, um, especially people who are very aggressive and assertive, like Trump is, because they see white Americans as people who saved their country. Um,
Mm.
but then it's like, when you really think about it, they've whitewashed the Philippines. So it's not that like they saved you, they just wanted to take over so they had more people, more territory.
Mm-hmm.
They've changed our culture to fit more of an American like mesh. Um, and it's just weird to me that a lot of Filipinos don't see that. A lot of our culture is getting erased because we take on more American like holidays or celebrations or um, trends, things like that. Like in the Philippines, there are things that they're like wipes that essentially bleach your skin to get lighter. So like
Yeah.
darker people in the Philippines are like frowned upon as opposed to whiter, lighter Filipinos.
Mm.
And so it's like we want to be more American, more white, but it's like why? And it's like our generation is really showing our older generations that what Americans did in the Philippines was actually bad. Like we have so many lost foreign, like not foreign, lost languages in the Philippines now because they've made English the like number one language taught. Um, and then they just don't prioritize as much of our culture, of the different dialects and the different areas of the Philippines as much as they do like American culture, I guess.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
No, that was less than what I said. That was great.
Um,
Yeah, go ahead, Allana.
I was just gonna say, I mean, this is just the typical history teacher in me, but I always just relate it back to history. Um, and I think it's this initial, and obviously there are other things in play and everything too. Um, but I think ultimately it does come from the initial divide that I think that was set between honestly all races, like,
Mm-hmm.
and even like even class status too. Like, um, I think there was this when they first started forming this country, there was this fear that like these lower, quote unquote, lower groups, or I don't know, I'm trying to think of another word, but these other groups of people. So the Africans they were bringing over, the Asian minorities they were bringing over, even the Native Americans,
Mm-hmm.
um, even the poor white people that were coming over as indentured servants. Like, I think there was this fear with those who were the predominant power at the time that at some point these groups would all band together and like overthrow them eventually. And so I think it starts from there where they really started to just sow discord and these narratives of like one group being quote unquote better than the other, or um maybe more easily able to assimilate than others, whatever else. And I think unfortunately that's stuck with certain communities,
Mm-hmm.
and it's impacted the way certain communities interact with each other. I mean, even just the way they colonized the world in general, like even the way they uh some nations were colonized in way harsher ways than others, or different ways. And so I think that plays a role in like why now, like, again, certain communities interact with the way they do with other communities. Obviously I think there's other things that come into play too, but That's kind of like my initial thought of like how I think about it.
Sure. No, I
From
think
that
there's a lot of nuance. I liked what this Michael, the author in this video, said, and then some of the other stuff we read. I think I agree without having read the book with kind of his take in that video, with saying that he kind of explained the title of the video is why are so many Asians going MAGA, and his response is just kind of what you said, Allana, like it's about history. And I think two things can be true. Like he essentially was saying, yeah, Asians included, but then Asians, Black community, everybody, I think probably doesn't understand Asian history very well because it's not taught.
Mhm.
Like even when we talk about the race conversation and racism stuff, it's very much, it's always in a black and white context. And so I think that two things can be true, that everyone cannot understand history, that there's a lot more similarities than people think with a lot of the Asian experience and Black experience. But it's still, to me, and I think that he was saying this, it was still different. And so I think there's just like the lack of understanding is just so detrimental to everybody. And that kind
Mhm.
of goes back into the education conversation. So I think that's, I mean, that's kind of where I land. And I think it's just important to understand. I think we've lost this ability to have nuance with this kind of stuff. And some of it's understandable, but I feel like, again, two things can be true. It can be understandable, like, oh, I see why this people group or these individuals think this way, but it's still like it's still bad and wrong and not good because of it. Almost always, it sounds reductive to a lot of people I know, but it always comes back to white supremacy kind of pulling the strings, because at different points in history, even like you said, it's like people in power turn each other against other people, like
Mhm.
whether it's different races or even poor white people. It's like, well, and kind of the mantra was, at least you're not Black. And so that's why I think it's okay to have two things be true. Like I don't think a lot of people, the Black community included, like understands really even what happened, like, you know, in the 40s with the Japanese internment camps and stuff. It's like that really happened. Like it doesn't mean there wasn't
What you
slavery.
went through,
Yeah, it
yeah,
doesn't
what you
mean
went through wasn't valid.
that's not valid. Doesn't mean we're trying to say, I mean, and again, to be fair, some people probably say, oh, when there's like, you know, the oppression competition, like who's oppressed more, like I know that that does happen, and that is an example of, we got to get away from that. But it doesn't mean, you know, it didn't happen. And I think like growing up, I can think of plenty of like specific like things that were said to me or like bullied out of me done by Black students growing up, or like friends, and that it was like it was relevant that they were like that they were Black. And so like I've had like plenty of instances of things said to me, but like understanding like that it was not good, or like I'm not condoning it, but like understanding, I don't know how it is all a kind of a thing I think is like is important. Like it doesn't make me be like, screw it, I'm not, you know, I'm only gonna speak up for Asian people now because that's like, because I'm getting it from Black and white people. Like I think that's probably that's not probably, that is the wrong reaction to have if you don't understand the big picture with everything. I don't know. Does that make sense to you guys?
No, it makes sense.
Empathy. It's like a lot of people lack empathy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, your people didn't help our people during this, so why should I help
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
And that's it's such a hard concept for me to understand, because why not why would it matter, but like it just shouldn't be that way.
I wonder what you guys think. Like, I think this is interesting. So like now I've seen this discourse take off a little bit with all the stuff that's happening with deportations and immigration, and then there's kind of a new wave of people gaining steam and speaking up about that atrocity of deportations and the attack on immigrants. And then I've seen a response from some of the Black community kind of being apathetic and thinking, what, this has happened like to us for forever, like where were you guys? So you guys will speak up now for immigration. And this stuff because it's not directly about the Black community, and like I think that's obviously like not the right way to go about it, but I understand because I mean I know some people like that, like because everyone has a threshold, and when it starts to affect them or like something's like, oh, I can speak into that, then it's like it does feel that way sometimes. Like, uh, okay, so are you only because then there's a whole thing of like, well, you only know what you know, or you're only going to care once it affects you. It's like
It affects
I
you.
agree, kind of to a point, but I'm also like then you kind of get in that's some thin ice to me sometimes because I'm like, well, yeah, we all have a threshold. I have my own threshold, so I'm not above anybody. But I think it's tough when you're not also seeing the whole picture best you can and speaking up just when wrong is wrong and right is right. I don't know. I'm not gonna ask you to speak for the entire Black community, Allana, but in this conversation, like, have you seen any of that type of language?
Yes. And it's funny because I a few months ago, me and my friends were actually having this exact conversation about it because um, I have a solid group of Black women that I like, some of my best friends, and we talk about everything, like politically, otherwise. It's just like we bounce everything off each other. But we were talking about this in regards to like with the recent election, and there was that this the is I want I can only the word I'm thinking of is narrative, but that's not the way I want it to be described. But where a lot of Black people were like, we need a break, like we're gonna remove ourselves, and that was a conversation we were having because I did have some friends who were like, this isn't the time to do that, like this isn't the time to remove yourself, like this is selfish, all this kind of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
there was another side to like a couple others of my friends who were like, well, we're tired, like
Hmm.
we we've been saying the same thing for years and it just feels like it's gone unheard. And and at this point we're in the same situation again, and it's worse. And so granted, like I understood both sides,
Mm-hmm.
and because there was a moment after this administration came into the presidency, and I was exhausted. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like I feel like I've maxed out on the the energy I can give to this.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, like that was just my moment of I really want to put my head in the sand, but I know I can't. But I also understood this the those who were saying we don't have any more to give you because again I'm pulling from history, but and it's because of this of history, like it's the civil rights movement started with the Black community, and then everybody else, which we're obviously happy about,
Mm-hmm.
super glad, but everybody else was able to get their civil rights after that. You know what I mean? It was a chain, it was a domino effect of we started, and then it's slowly like women and then other cultures. I don't know the timing of every like when it all kind of it fell, but like eventually every disabilities, like everybody really was able to start fighting for their equality. And so I think for the Black community, and obviously I'm not speaking for everybody, but just from everything I've seen, it was this unfortunate thought process of like we've shown up for everybody. Like
Mm-hmm.
throughout history, we show up, and we show up in mass. Whenever you need us, we're there. Like even
Yeah.
when it doesn't really benefit us in the end, we're still there. And so I think for as a community, for the most part, a lot of people were like, we literally went through this once
Mm-hmm.
and we fought against it, changed direction, tried to, and like as this new administration was coming back, it was like we tried to remind you guys, like, okay, this was what it was like 4 years ago. This is why we needed a shift. Like literally, I think we were like, anybody else. Like, you could go either direction, either
Yeah.
party, but anybody else but this guy, please. And it just, again, it felt like we were not heard. And so I think I understood why everybody was like, we got to take a minute, because it felt like we took a really big blow. But I also agreed with my friend, with my other side of the narrative, the other side of the it's not a discourse, but the conversation, which was, this isn't the time to take a step back, because even though we were like, this isn't affecting us now because their sights are on uh, immigrants at the moment, um, it's eventually will hit us. And like, that's the thing, like, it starts with one group, and you can go into the Holocaust Museum and you can see that quote that's always at the end, where it's like, um I don't know the words because it's kind of late, but it's like, it started with this group, and then and then they were gone, and then they started with the next group and they were gone, and then it was me, and then there was no one there to stand up for me, you know what I mean? And so I think um it came back. Like, I think that's the thing that I always keep in the back of my head, and that's why I kind of was like, I need a break, and then I was like, okay, it's not time for a break, because like, eventually it will get to a point where there's nobody else to help me.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure I'm there to help to help. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Hopefully that's now
No,
making sense. So I think, while I don't agree with, like, it was definitely an intense conversation being had, but I think that's where it was coming from. And I think now, like, especially because, like, again, not speaking for the Black community, but when it comes to kids, we don't play. So I think, like, now, like, when we're starting to see, like, we're coming back, like, we're trying to, like, especially in California, like, places that we know, like, really like, need us to show up. And again, it's that mindset, and it's something I even had a conversation with my family about, because I was like, y'all, we really gotta start paying attention. And I had family members who were like, well, it's not gonna affect us, and I'm like, yeah, you think that, but eventually it will. And I was like, I'd rather be in the front line super early, so that way it doesn't
come
back to bite us later.
Yeah, and I
did
mean,
I answer your question? I feel like
no, yeah, you did, yeah. I mean, I can't expect neat little answers when I ask the questions I ask. That was great though. I think that, like, I mean, I completely agree. I think it's that messy, and I think that there's validity to both sides of that, like, of that argument, or not argument, conversation you were having. I think what comes to mind for me personally is, well, one, we all have our threshold, we all have our limits, so, like, we do need to rest and check out sometimes. I think the mindset of, screw it, like, I don't need to be part of helping that people going through something that I would want people to help me get through, is probably wrong. But it doesn't mean there's no reason to take a break and be, because you're tired and worn out, and rightfully so. I think for me, and I'm cynical, like, about cynical as they come with this stuff. So, like, I don't like I'm hesitant to even share some of my story naturally, for better and for worse, but I'm hesitant because I know certain parts of my story, like the biggest parts of my story, people who naturally aren't very engaged with this conversation would jump on to help. And that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but to me, I don't like that, because to me that shows disingenuity. And I just don't think that is a helpful thing in this conversation. And what I mean is, I was born in South Korea, but raised here in America by a white family, very white Christian context. And people don't realize this has gone on since Trump's first term, or whatever, first administration. And like, there was whispers of people like me who were just, adopted infants, being like a couple, done away with amendments or whatever, of being people that could possibly get deported. To most people, that sounds crazy now, but to me, it doesn't sound crazy because that's affected me and that I've kept up with that and like know what kind of documentation I need to have and do and don't have, whatever. It is crazy, but it's real. I've started to share that a little more because I think it is helpful in certain contexts, but I'm hesitant to share that because a lot of people will hear like, oh, like, you guys, kind of like people love adoption stories, stuff like that. They'll be, oh my gosh, like, tell me everything you know. To me, I hate that because I'm like, unless it's people that were engaged all the time, but like, there's people that like don't give a rip about, whatever, the BLM movement or getting rid of Department of Education, all this kind of stuff, and think that all that just needs to stop talked about. To me, I'm just like, yeah, I'll deal with this on my own, or like I'm not gonna waste time like trying to convince you guys because like if that's where your threshold is, and I'm not saying this is right, but to me, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna hold those personal cards closer to the chest because I don't think that's helpful. So I guess to me, that's what came to mind when thinking about like kind of the solidarity thing. And I know a handful of people in my area right now that like I recently met through like our church that like have left other places, and because of I made certain assumptions at first, but left because of different political beliefs that they just didn't feel like psychologically safe in their environment where they're at attending church. And then I found out like, at least one of those places, it was, these are Asian people, but were the Asian population at the church. And I found that just interesting. And then there's a handful of other, even locally, of people that I've gotten wind of that are fit this bill of like, they're about this current administration, and I've talked to some of them or like seen stuff that they've like put out like publicly, and I'm like, I'm still just not seeing anything logical other than they're just completely misinformed about what is happening. And it's baffling to me like how the masses that are so misinformed, not just like a couple exceptions, and it just that kind of goes off a little bit on a rabbit trail from the solidarity conversation, but it relevant in the sense of like, I get why it can be messy. And then some of those articles we're reading about 92, like the Rodney King riots, and then an Asian shop owner killing a black girl who I think was stealing like something tiny, bottle of water or something like that.
He thought she was stealing water.
Yeah, but that whole kind of trope, I think, is something that is historical too, about just the whole, in that case, like telling, immigrants, small business owners, like, hey, look out for the black people, they're shoplifters. And I think like that's a real thing so that kind of thing informs the black Asian solidarity or tension at times. Anyway, I'm kind of riffing too. Vicky, do you have anything?
I was just thinking this is one where I don't talk as much. Um, what really stood out to me about what you were saying about solidarity, kind of hit home with me for a couple people, um, because it's like they're not having these conversations with me, right? So it's like I don't know where they're standing here.
Mm.
But then when they like, I don't even know how to say this. And then they see like me posting things, then they suddenly like start to ask me questions, and then I feel the same way that you do, where you're just like, you haven't been riding with me this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like I have to give them grace, and I have to show like even if I'm tired, I still have to feel like I have to pour into them, just because that's one less person feeling the way, like that's one more person understanding my perspective of what we're going through. When I was listening to Allana talk about like your friends and your friend group, I was thinking how different, I guess like my circle is, because my family's very blended. So my stepdad is black, and we have several family group chats with all of them. And then I also have like my Asian family and all my Asian cousins. And it's like I know that there is a history behind like Black versus Asian people, but it's hard for me to understand it
Mm,
completely because I see like my family coming together so often. Like I even remember my cousin like trying to explain this to me, and I can't even remember what exactly she told me, as to like why this is such a big phenomenon between Blacks and Asians. But I don't know. I think it goes back to empathy. Um, but those were just a few things that were rolling through my head while I was listening
yeah.
to you guys talk.
One example comes to mind that was from a few years ago in the NBA, and I don't know all the historical context to what both people were referencing. I know you'll understand what I'm talking about, but I don't know all the history of it all. But I thought it was a good, not clean answer, but a good exchange. It was on Twitter. So Jeremy Lin, um, former NBA player, I guess. You guys are familiar with him, correct? I can explain more.
Hmm.
Jeremy Lin. Alana, you don't know. Okay, Jeremy Lin.
Sorry.
Lin Sanity? You don't know Lin Sanity? Okay.
No, I'm sorry. I just know the big names like Kobe.
Okay. Well, at least you know that. That's really all you need to know. Okay, Jeremy Lin. I think he's Taiwanese. He is a professional basketball player. He's not currently in the NBA, so I'm saying former NBA player, but he's still playing. His nickname is Linsanity because he had. I mean, there's documentaries about it. It's nuts. He had like an unprecedented run for like 3 months when he came into the league, where he was Kobe. He like torched everybody, like just was killing everyone, and he played for the Knicks. So, and the Knicks
They're intense.
usually suck, but they're intense. And so everyone's like, "This is Linsanity," like Jeremy Lin Linsanity, and it was just like, "This is insane." And he's Asian. There's never been a really good Asian NBA player, so it was crazy. Like it was like the best moment in sports for Asian people. Anyway, so and then he, for whatever reason, it sucked. Like he kind of dwindled and just was a mediocre player for a while. Now he's not in the league, but real good guy. Like anyway, very likable. But he went through this phase where he did his hair really crazy for like a season. Like every game he had nuts hair. Like he did
I think my
like
husband was telling me about
mohawk.
this.
Like like
Yeah.
this high. Like kind of every hairstyle you could think of. He always looked crazy, and he just did it for fun. And then at one point he did like cornrows or dreads or whatever, which I don't love that. But so he did that, and then this other player, former player Kenyon Martin, started tweeting at him and called him out and just said, "We get it, man. You want to be Black so bad." And okay, well, so there's that. And then I understand what he means. Did he need to say that? I don't know. And then Jeremy Lin's response was, "Hey, man, I thought it was a great response. He said, "Hey, appreciate like any like real conversation we can have about this." And said something. I should have pulled it up, but something to the fact of, um, I'm appreciative of all cultures. Like I can understand like what you're talking about, like what you're bringing up. Just like I can also appreciate why you have Chinese tattoos on your neck. Kind of like a little bit of a mic drop kind of type thing. It's like so we can both appreciate each other's cultures. It looks like, and then like say thanks, and then I don't think he said Kenyon Martin said anything after that. And Kenyon Martin's like a very outspoken guy. I thought that was like is kind of like a lighthearted example, kind of what we're talking about like I think you got Kenyon Martin, who's Black, but Kenyon Martin's response of I'm tired of our culture being appropriated, and perhaps by another community of color. But then, yeah, Jeremy Lin being able to bring up what I think is relevant to what we're talking about, something very misunderstood, like the appropriation of many Asian cultures, and him saying like, yeah, I'm assuming you probably don't really know it's tattooed on you in Chinese or whatever, like a lot of people have. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of an example, like, huh, okay,
Okay,
yeah, I
I'll be
get it.
right back. Give me
Yeah,
1 sec. You guys
you're
can
good.
continue to talk.
Yeah, you're good. I don't know. I thought that was a kind of a lighthearted
Yeah.
example of where that kind of plays out sometimes.
Yeah, I can see both sides to it, like both valid, both valid. Um, I think I think again it goes back to empathy, and I think it goes back to conversations, and again history. And I obviously I can only speak from like the black side of things. Like I know with us, like culture wise, especially like being African American, and we're we're not like we're very intense about our culture in regards to the fact that like we had to create it from scratch, if that makes sense. Like uh especially because like if you like like compare us with Africans, like we're very different.
Yeah.
We're not like culturally different. We like if we were to try like we would not be welcome. Like
Yeah.
we would, but we wouldn't, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Like we would
Yeah, yeah.
be out. So like I think for us, like that's why we're so intense about it, especially because and not I wouldn't even say it's communities of color. I hate to be like throwing white people continuously under the bus. Colonial, like
They can handle it.
like they like I think we have a lot of trauma with them coming in and taking our culture and then making it their own, and then profiting off of it and not giving us the credit that we deserve for it. So like I think there's even conversations I've seen recently, maybe the past couple years, about like what is white culture and like where does it stem from, because it seems to stem from not just black culture or African Americans. It stems from a lot of
Stealing.
the yeah, like a lot of the
Yeah.
minorities that they colonized. And so I think that's where it's stemming from. And then also that's why I'm going to use Beyonce as an example, queen. But like that's why it's like when Beyonce did when she's doing her like her three acts, right? It
Hmm.
may be more, but for right now we know it's three. So like she did act one, which was house music slash like electronic music,
Hmm.
and then like that one was good, was my fave. But that's why with Cowboy Carter it was such a big deal, and it hit a lot, like, well, at least for me, I it was so intense and so intensely received by the African American community, because she's coming back and she's telling the story of like, I'm reclaiming these this culture that was African American,
Yeah.
or it's prompted by African Americans that were erased. So
Yeah.
like especially after uh she was at the CMAs, and they were being basically they were like so just like so mean to her and saying she wasn't country
Hmm.
and all this kind of stuff. And so she came back and she reclaimed those narratives, and I think that's why we're just very touchy about it. But I think we, as a community, I think we also again have to realize that with other communities of color, like we all, whether, and again it goes back to like not hanging on to that oppression Olympics too, like we all were colonized by the same people. And so like our like our this narrative that has divided us for so long, like we have to learn to like figure out a way around it, or like have those conversations to find some sort of solution around. I don't know
Hmm.
if I'm saying that right or if that makes sense, but like I feel like that kind of usually does hold us back from that solidarity
Yeah.
um a
I
lot of
think
the
that
time.
I think that's perfect. Like to
Hmm.
me, even what you're saying is, and what I think I assume is that even the essence of appropriation is, you mentioned profiting, but then the taking and then benefiting in general,
Mhm.
whether it's just
And even,
praise in
sorry.
general for something that you or the black community would have been punished
Mhm.
for, or something like
And
I
like
don't know, like a hairstyle or clothing, stuff like that. It's like, oh, you guys are. thugs or criminals or something and sloppy, and then it's like, oh, this is a new fashion thing, this is awesome, when it's appropriated.
Yeah, but I also think it's important to also recognize that like the Asian community also went through this like similar things, you know, like with the Japanese internment camps.
Mm-hmm.
They had to sell, like I don't even think they sold it they for any profit. Like the white people came in and took all their businesses and then never gave it back. Like they also were like set back. So like I think it's again it comes back to like education, history, having those conversations and realizing that like whether like whether the experiences were worse or not worse, all the communities did experience trauma.
Mm-hmm.
You were like and that has affected how we like move now, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like
We got to wrap up because I don't want to keep you guys all night. But I'd say on that, like, I wonder, Vicky, what you think. In my understanding, I'd say, even bringing up like Japanese internment camps, my understanding, even historically, there's been a good amount of reparations made. Obviously, much too late, and that'll never repair everything, but made towards a lot of survivors that those affected. And but then there's, classically, typically pushback towards any mention of reparations when it comes to the Black community and stuff. So that's even what I'd say. Of just like, there's just conversations that are just need to be had. Yes, understanding, but then it's just like, well, there's definitely like still an undertone to, I don't know how to say it, but like without saying like this, but like who is hated more or has it worse in a lot of these cases historically. I just think that there needs to be just an all-around understanding on both sides of like, okay,
I agree with that.
like what's reality. And I'd say when I think about, like, we've talked about plenty, like the model minority myth, I think we talk about how that is like an Asian thing, and like an Asian,
Mm-hmm.
like that is about like the model minority is our Asian people, but how that the inverse of that is, to me, anti-Blackness in a lot of ways, because like you're literally the model minority, like you good, you're not this. And so like I just think that's for Asian people, like listening, like I think that's okay to acknowledge and just understand it. It doesn't mean we don't
No
go,
one
like
is
we haven't gone through
devaluing.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah. No one is taking away our trauma or what happened to us in the past or what is continuing to happen to us. It's just we have to move our pieces around the board.
yeah.
um, because it's not like one group of people got it worse than the other. We've all been treated poorly, and it's just a matter of like like we've been saying this whole time is information and learning and understanding that we've all been through a lot. We've all been colonized by the same people. That was like such a great like realization.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you guys just hit the nail on the head for everything that we've been talking about.
Yeah. No, you guys have done great. Thank you for, as always, wading through my long-winded. I don't even get to a question usually. I'm just like, all right, what do you guys think? After I spout off a bunch of stuff to you guys. Before we go, I don't know how to do this, but recommendations for people listening of things they should check out.
Oh, I knew you were gonna do this, and I forgot to look something up.
I kind of got away from it, and I like getting back to it. Give people some homework. I'll go first. I've got a really good one that I'm fresh off of from vacation. Allana, you're the reader, so I'm wondering if you even know what this is. But the show, which was a book like 10 years ago, We Were Liars.
Yeah.
Have you read that?
I haven't read it, but I've been hearing really good things about the show.
You might not think it's has anything to do with racial commentary or anything, but it's fantastic. It's really good overall, but the messages in it I thought were really good dialogue. It's on Amazon Prime. Caitlin and I binged it last week on vacation. But the funny thing is it's a novel that I think has a couple others, like a prequel to it. Anyway, it's a novel that we both read like 10 years ago, and I honestly forgot all of it. And she only remembered how it ended, which was like she was waiting the whole time, like, oh my gosh, how's it going to get there? Because she couldn't remember anything in between. For me, I didn't remember anything. And so I remembered like 10%. So then, I mean, the end is crazy, but I recommend that to you guys, but then also to our listeners. Yeah. Anyway, Amazon Prime, really entertaining.
Can I get back to you with the
Yeah.
recommendation?
Yeah.
I love choosing children's books because they are
Yeah.
just like so to the point because they were written for a younger human to understand. And so if a younger human can understand it, then like adults can, which is why I love Dreamers from our last episode. Um, I have a couple in mind. Let me think on it, and
All
then I'll
right.
text you.
Yes.
But I do hear my kiddo crying upstairs, so I do
All
have
right.
to hop off
Hey,
here.
you get out of here. Thank you, Vicky, as always, for
Yeah,
jumping
thank
on here.
you. Thanks for having me. I didn't talk as
Yes.
much, but Allana, you did amazing.
Thank you. It was nice meeting you.
You too. I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. See ya.
All right, bye.
I'm trying to think. Okay. For me, it's gonna be a movie. And it's a horror movie, so I recommend for 18 plus. But it's Sinners.
That's on HBO, and I've been meaning. So the thing is, Caitlin won't watch that with me, so I'm trying to figure out. It's got to
Yeah.
be a time where I'm by myself, or someone else
Yeah.
will watch it with me. Heard it's amazing.
Yeah. It is a little, again, 18 plus, but I think the story is really good. It's actually not that scary, to be honest. I mean, it's just vampires. But
Yeah.
I like it because of the historical
Mm-hmm.
narrative it shows. So like it's about these two twin vampire, or not vampires, I'm sorry. Two twin men. They're two men who are twins. They're black, and I think they just fought in World War II, and they were in Chicago, and they come back to the Jim Crow South to open up a juke joint. And so it's about them, and then it's their cousin who is his family are, I believe his family are sharecroppers.
Okay.
So, but his father's a preacher and he really loves music, but his father is against it because at the time,
Yeah.
and I mean even now with like really heavily religious communities, some people believe like secular music is the devil's music.
Yeah.
And so it all takes place in one day. And so he is like, he like goes in and tells his dad, I'm leaving to go hang out with the cousins. The dad's like, be careful, like that's the devil's music, I really want you to like not really do that. And he's just like, I'm gonna live my life. The whole day is them spending, like they're getting just this juke joint together, passing out the word, trying to basically like build up the place for the night because it's going to be an event. And that's when they encounter the vampires. But like the historical nuances that Ryan Coogler, thank you, put into this movie is beautiful. Like it was so funny because I was watching with my dad, and my dad's white, so I was like I could tell it was kind of going over his head a bit, and I was like explaining the nuances because it's really insane. The way he did it is like crazy because I had been hearing how good it was, and I wasn't sure, and then I watched it, and I was like, no,
Yeah, I've heard
because
it's amazing.
It was like just the between, like reading the between the lines of like the nuances of like colorism and and there's even because there's two Asian characters, so even the aspect of the fact that there were Asian people living in the Jim Crow South.
Oh, we should have watched that before this episode.
Yeah, so like it's relevant to the episode, but like even just that narrative, because not people didn't know that, like that Asian people did it within Black communities, and they were accepted, and they did live together, and in that aspect, and even ties into like because of the lead vampire, he's a Irishman, so an Irish immigrant, so even his narrative of like him being an immigrant, his people, even though Irish people are majority white, historically, they were also going through their own colonization, and that plays a role into it. And the way he just did it was amazing, and I'm gonna
get on that. Oh,
it was.
I can't remember if we were talking about this before we hit record. I think it was, but John Mark said that talking about that movie would get him to come back on. So That's it. I'm gonna watch it, and I'll have you
If
guys
you
back
give me
on.
I'll talk about it.
Yeah, that's a great. Yeah, that would be a great way to get him back on. Maybe I can convince him. Yeah, I should have recorded him. Or actually, I think he texted me. I'll just send him the picture. But hey, you said so. We're
Yeah,
gonna do
because
it.
even just the ties to ancestry and
Okay.
how that plays a
Yeah.
role in like music and shaping. Yeah,
Man,
it was beautiful. I loved it, and
that's
I love
awesome.
the way he did it.
That's awesome. All right, we were liars, sinners, and whatever Vicky texts me about, I'll put that all in the show notes for recommendations. Allana, thank you so much for doing this, especially so late at night. Vicky,
Yeah, no problem.
she's not here anymore, but thank you so much for doing this. Listeners, thank you for listening. As always, our music that you're about to listen to is done by our guy Dylan Dent. Our artwork was created by Ashley Bush. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace. All right.
Life in 3 dimensions got me bent and got me twisted. I know I done said a lot, but I should probably stop pretending. I don't really hold the key and I can't really push a button. I just step up to the mic and try my very best to bust it, but I ran out of breath. It's tight in my chest, my feet just might fail. I can't stand up. The nightmare might scare you, no worse than reality. They hunt you by day, R.I.P. in my heart armory. Everybody got a time, but that's less than comforting. I hope I'm alive by the time they choose to comfort me. Mosquitoes in the vein, or leeches on my soul. This money on my mind is a fracture in my bones. You get crippled by continuing existence like a ghost. And they wonder why we drink, and they wonder why we smoke, and they wonder why we think that everything's a joke. I'm shocked that we can sleep, must be the thought of letting go.